So, Assalamu alaikum. What I was saying that welcome to session 2. Today we're talking about the Abbasids, okay? Okay, so I got some feedback yesterday that it was kind of overwhelming. I'm sorry to tell you today is overwhelming as well. So yesterday we covered like 100 years. Today we're talking about at least 600, 700 years. Okay, so objectives again. So we'll learn about the Abbasid Caliphate, how they came to power, and how did it end up with the downfall. We'll talk about important figures and events that took place. We'll explore some aspects of the art, architecture, literature. Like we said yesterday, history keeps repeating itself. The wise learn from the mistakes, and we'll try not to repeat it again. Again, we need to be all proud of our Muslim heritage, and we acknowledge that nobody is immune from doing mistakes. Like errors always happening. So we should be proud of what happened of our Muslim heritage, but at the same time, there are mistakes that happened that led to the downfall. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. And I apologize, the pictures are not as great as yesterday's. It's just because of the short period of time that I had to prepare this lecture in. So the Abbasid Caliphate started 750 AD and ended in 1258. That date, 1258, that was the date of the sack of Baghdad, right? When Baghdad was destructed by the Mongols. Because officially speaking, it ended in 1571. But for today, let's take 1215 AD with the destruction of Baghdad. So you can track, the Abbasids track their ancestry to Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam uncle. And this is one of the claims when they're propagandizing their agenda, for the Abbasid Caliphate against the Umayyads. We're closer to the Prophet than the Umayyads. So we have many when anybody who's asked about the Abbasid Caliphate capitals, the very first answer is usually it's Baghdad. And that's true because for the most period of time it has been Baghdad. But this was not the only capital. So here Kufa was the first capital, Anbar just for a few periods of time, while Baghdad is being constructed. And after Baghdad was sacked by the Mongols for a few period of time, there was no caliph for 3 years it was. And then it moved actually to Cairo, Egypt. So just a quick glimpse about the caliphate rule. So when you hear caliphate, is this a religious ruler or this is a secular ruler? Secular rulers means we're talking about a leader, a president or a king that takes care of the worldly stuff. Until the Abbasids, we're talking that the caliphate is performing both roles, the religious role and the secular role. But what we're going to learn that during the Abbasid Caliphate, things are going to split up. So we talked yesterday that the Abbasids started publicity for the caliphate secretly, right? They used a secret message. So they played on the anti-Umayyad sentiment. So yesterday we talked that there were ethnic divisions that hit the Umayyads, right? They're favored for Arabs. So what the non-Arabs think now, right? So they reached out to the Mawali. Mawali is the non-Arabs who actually became Muslims, right? So we talked about that the Muslims started in the Arabian Peninsula and went all the way to Persia. So the Persians are here now. The Turks actually started in Asia and then moved over here. So the Turks are with us, the North Africans, the Berbers. So they reached out to the Mawali. Okay, anti-Umayyads are using discrimination against you. Let's fight them and so on and so forth. So we talked about Persians, Turks, and they reached out to the Alawites or Alawiyin. So we talked yesterday that Al-Alawiyin, those who claim that the right of Ali's ibn Abi Talib descendants in the caliphate. So the Alawites performed or actually had many revolutions going on in Yemen, in Hijaz, in Egypt. So the Abbasids actually reached out to the Alawites as well, asking for their support. So the secret message has been spreading amongst the Mawali, the discrimination, playing on the discrimination factor and the Alawites as well. So how did it start? So Abu Muslim al-Khurasani is one of the Abbasid leaders. And of course, he's from Khorasan. Khorasan is where right now is Iran and Afghanistan. And he gathered a big army and they started fighting over there. And then at the same time, Abu al-Abbas as-Saffah came out with a public message asking people for support for the Abbasid Caliphate. It's not a secret message anymore. And both of them join forces and meet together and fight the Umayyads in the Zab battle. And we talked yesterday, it was Marwan ibn Muhammad is the last Umayyad caliph. So why did they call him Saffah? Saffah that means the assassin, right? He didn't have mercy on the Umayyads. There was no one left from the Umayyad princes except for Abdurrahman al-Dakhil. Abdurrahman al-Dakhil is having a nickname of Saqr al-Quraysh or the Eagle of Quraysh. And we'll talk about him, inshallah, next time when we talk about Al-Andalus. He's a very, very important figure in the Andalusian history. So this is how it started. Let's talk more about the Abbasid dynasties. So Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, the second caliph, he established the city of Baghdad. Al-Shafi'i says about Baghdad, if you have not seen Baghdad, then you have not seen the world yet. So one of the most beautiful cities you can see is in the middle between Euphrates and Tigris. In Arabic is Digla wal-Furat. They established a position that was not there before, al-Wazir, or the Vizier, which is currently equivalent to an advisor or a prime minister. Why is this important? Because lots of problems will be happening in the future because of the wazir position. We're giving examples about the golden age. So after Abu Ja'far al-Mansur came al-Hadi, then al-Mahdi, and then Harun al-Rashid. Harun al-Rashid era was an era of prosperity. Let's talk about the Golden Age in general. Harun al-Rashid is just given as an example here, right? But his era was an age of prosperity, advancement. So he took care of science, literature, philosophy. The Abbasid Empire kept expanding. There was always warfare going on with the Byzantine Empire. But every great leader is not holy, right? So we all do mistakes, and same with the caliphs. Harun Rashid did an error by the end of his life. He actually divided the empire amongst his two sons, Al-Amin and Al-Ma'mun. So Al-Ma'mun was given the province of Khorasan and the east part of the empire, while Al-Amin was given Iraq, and the western part. And guess what happened? They fight together, right? So civil war starts, Al-Amin versus Al-Ma'mun. Al-Ma'mun starts creating his own army. The Persians are helping him now. They go for the siege of Baghdad, and ends with the Al-Amin death. Now, Al-Ma'mun takes over, and actually his era is the golden ages continue. He takes care of science, he takes care of the scientists, philosophy, and so on and so forth. We'll still talk about the golden age shortly after his brother Al-Mu'tasim takes over. Al-Mu'tasim is very famous in history because of the Amuriyah incident. So what happened over there? So as we said, the Abbasid Caliphate was always in warfare against the Byzantine Empire, and one of the cities was Amuriyah. What happened is that the Romans, there was a woman there, right? She was captured, she was dragged, she was taken to prison. She asked help from the Abbasid Caliph. And in Arabic, there is a very famous wa mu'tasima, meaning like, oh Mu'tasim, help me. So what happened is, Mu'tasim sends a message to the emperor saying, from the leader of believers to the Roman dog, release the woman from prison, or I come to you with an army that begins from your side and ends over here in Baghdad. So he did a great job. I mean, he's a great example of the golden age rulers that gives them, giving the whole Muslims at that era pride. They had the strength, the bravery. He was always defending his, the people that he was actually governing. But as every good ruler, he still did mistake. So what was the mistake he has done? His mom was Turkish, so he was always created to the Turkish side, or the Turkish population in his empire. He had his own Turkish troops. He favored the Turkish politicians. So what will this cause in amongst the population and the community? The Arabs are unhappy, the Persians are unhappy, so, starting civil unrest. So actually, he has eventually to move out of Baghdad and move to the city of Samarra, and he takes his troops and all his Turkish politicians, everyone, they stay over there. Samarra is one of the most beautiful cities, and it comes from Surra man ra'a in Arabic, meaning it's a pleasure to be seen by the eye. After Mu'tasim, well, things doesn't go that well, okay? Al-Wathiq takes over, and he does a fatal mistake. So he gets closer to his Turkish troops that his ancestors have. So actually, he entitles the leader of the Turkish army Sultan of the Turks. And that's the beginning of the end, because the Turks amongst each other, they're fighting for the title, Sultan of the Turks. The Arabs are unhappy. The Persians want to get the same title. Big civil unrest happened. While the prime ministers are getting the title sultans, the caliphs continue to weaken, because as the prime ministers are getting stronger, they're taking from the authority of the caliphs, right? So the caliphs just, the authority is going away, they get weaker. While they're fighting in Iraq, everybody's fighting, the title. Let's see what's happening in the Islamic world. I'm sorry, this is in Arabic. I couldn't find an English one, but I just put some translation up there, by the figures here. So the Idrisis started the Idrisi state of Morocco. The Ghalibids controlling Libya, Tunisia, and Algeria. Egypt, they started with having the Ptolemies, and then the Ikshids follow. We have the Seljuks in Iran and the Iraq. We have the Ghaznavids, they started in Afghanistan, their own countries. So we have separate states now. They all may follow the Abbasid Caliph, but each one of them has a different ruler. So it's not all under the authority under the Abbasid Caliphate, except for from the religious standpoint, right? So Al-Mutawakkil comes after, and then says, okay, let's fix it. So he tried to put the Turkish forces under control, and they reach out to his supporters to control them. But actually, the Turkish forces reach out to his son, Al-Muntasir Billah, and they actually get in touch with him and say, okay, your father is trying to do that. He's not doing a good job. Why don't you take over? So he conspires with them, and they bring his father down to him, and they kill him. And that's what happened. Well, what happened after that, Al-Muntasir Billah and the Turkish troops don't get along, and they kill him. So the Abbasids start thinking, okay, now we're done. We start having a series of weaker caliphs. We had caliphs that even sat on the throne for just one day. So then start thinking, we need help. So they reach out to the neighboring states. So we have a state called Wahid state that's part of Iran. The only issue with the Wahid state, they are Shiite. So the Abbasid Empire is Sunni. Next time, inshallah, when we talk about the Fatimids, Dr. Muhammad Saleh will tell us more about the Shia and Sunnah and how did it all start. But anyway, so this is a Shia empire, the Shia state. How come they will just come and help the Caliph, the Sunni Caliph of Baghdad? Why didn't you just overthrow him? Because what happened is that their claim for the throne is that the Alawites are actually the ones to be in power. They need to rule. So if they overthrow the Abbasid Sunni Caliph, it means they will have to bring in an Alawite to put him on the throne. So they said, no, you know what? We'll just keep him. He's a puppet. He's not doing much. And we will be behind the scenes ruling. And this is actually what happened. So the empire keeps growing weaker and being divided even more and more. And the Fatimid Caliphate started rising and controls the whole North African, Hijaz, even part of the Levant. We had a period of time where we actually had three caliphs at the same time. We have the Abbasids, we have the Fatimids, we have the Umayyads in the Andalus. Remember, we talked yesterday about the Umayyads and the expansion they did all the way to Spain and Portugal. When the Abbasids came, they were controlling the whole empire except for the Andalus. So we have three Muslim caliphates in the same period of time. So the Abbasids now are tired with the Buwayhids. They're Shia, they're getting, in fights together. So we have now a new player that's showing up is the Seljuks, as-Salajiqa in Arabic, right? This is a Sunni state. And actually they expanded massively into massive territories. Some of you guys, maybe their parents are watching Turkish series, Toghrul Beyk, Alab Arslan. These are very famous Seljuk sultans. Okay, so we said this is a Sunni state. They actually fought against the Byzantines in Manzikert, or Malazakert in Arabic, battle. And the defeat of Byzantine Empire was great to the extent that the Seljuks spent all the way to the Byzantine, halfway to Byzantine Empire. They were controlling the Anatolian plateau. The Roman emperor actually fell in captivity. But things doesn't stay the same for long, right? We talked yesterday about the cycle of civilizations and how everything goes up and down. The Seljuks start having their own civil war. They start fighting for the throne. Now we have a new player joining the Crusaders. We're not talking about Crusaders. We'll leave this for Dr. Lay when he talks about the Ayyubids. But actually, the Crusaders come in, they started invading, they create their own states. And of course, the Caliph now is just a title, has no power, right? We're actually having more important danger coming from the east. Yes, Crusaders were coming from the west, from the Mediterranean and Europe, but actually the real danger is coming from the east, Genghis Khan. So in Genghis Khan, we'll talk about more in details when we start talking about the Mamluks, when Dr. Sharif will talk to us about that. But anyway, he unified the tribes in Mongolia, and he starts swamping over, he takes over China, Asia, all the way to the Middle East. And now we see that Hulagu Khan, his grandson, he's standing on the border of Baghdad, and he reaches out to the Caliph asking him to surrender. Of course, the Caliph didn't surrender. They started fighting, they lose, and he asked that his Khalifa al-Mustasim and his family and everybody that works for him come out for him. After Hulagu know where the treasures are hidden, they killed everyone. He killed everyone. He killed al-Mustasim, his family, the ministers, everybody that came out with it. And actually, the way the Mustasim was killed, they put him in a rug and they asked the horses to run over. So it's pretty humiliating when we're looking at it. From the Mongol standpoint, they thought it's dignifying because dignifying way of death for them when the blood doesn't touch the ground. Anyway, this is just a side point. So Khalifa Mustasim, right? The city was sacked. Almost 2 million Muslims were killed. Okay, it was pretty intense. And people were really, really afraid. That there's a story that's written in our history books saying that a Mongol soldier would ask someone to wait for him till he go grab a soldier and come back to kill him. And that guy doesn't run away. So that was pretty devastating. The smell of death was really all over the place. That Hulagu took his troops and had to leave the city because they couldn't tolerate it anymore. Of course, the House of Wisdom, we'll talk about that in a different slide, was destroyed completely as well. So that happened in 1258. So what happened after? So 1258, this is when we say the Abbasid Caliphate is gone. Actually, there will be an honorary role for the Caliph from there on. The Mamluk Sultan, Baybars, will reach out to descendant of the Caliphs and ask them to move over to Cairo. And the only thing they're doing over there is they give their blessings to the new ruler and so on and so forth. And this stayed like that till Sultan Selim I came to Egypt in 1517. And we'll talk about the Sultan as well in one of our last lectures. So we talked real quick about the empire. So what did they leave? What's the heritage they left us? So let's talk about literature. So they left Kalila wa Dimna is one of the very famous book written by Ibn al-Muqaffa, right? And that was very first in its time. And I think in the book, basically animals are the heroes and they're talking to each other. Other very famous book that everyone knows, 1000 Nights and Night. And from this book that all those movies you guys have watched, Aladdin, Alibaba and 40 Thieves, Sinbad, all these characters are actually come from 1000 Nights and Nights. We have the famous Noon Layla. Layla's Crazy Lover was written then. And actually it was said that Majnun Layla was an inspiration for Romeo and Juliet to be written later on in Europe. It's questionable though, but it's worth noting. Poetry has evolved tremendously. We have the amorous poetry, like the love poetry. We have the Sufi poetry evolved. So it just evolved in every extent. Architecture as well has developed. We talked about Samarra that Al-Mutawakkil Al-Mu'tasim, has established for himself and his troops. Damascus was almost having 100 hammams. Hammams means the bathhouse, right? Schools were built. This is an existing Al-Mustansariya school still there in Iraq and Baghdad, still stands. Music and singing. So the modern oud is lute, there's another word for it, was evolved in this era. They took care of, they were interested in music so much that some of the caliphs actually they were involved in like playing music and singing and so on. So that's what happened when economy prospers, right? We talked yesterday that, strong men create weaker empires and then it keeps going in a circle. So that's what happened. You have economy prospers and everything else flourishes, right? So science. I'm sorry about the bad slides, but I didn't have time to fix it. But anyway, so imagine that the students at this age in the 600s were studying about Euclides and Pythagoras. So what are you expecting from the graduates, right? They will become great scientists. And this is actually what happened. So they figured out how to manufacture glass, hard soap, the early syringe, magnifying glass. They reached out to nations nearby. They reached out to China and they brought in the paper and gunpowder. They were actually using windmills to grind the seeds and so on and so forth. This is the Astrolab. Astrolab is basically an instrument. Then you can detect the location of planets. It's used for astrology. Okay, this is Al-Khwarizmi. This is the guy who actually, every one of us studied algebra at school. Like he's the one who came up with the algebra. Okay, maybe not your favorite right now, but you'll appreciate it when you grow up. This is a picture. This is a recent picture. Okay, but this is not real. But they actually, in their era, they invented the geared grits mill. Grits mill is where they grind the seeds. This is what the job is. And it was actually geared, like automated. And let's say, we'll see in a second how were they able to make it automated. We have famous scientists coming. We have Hassan ibn al-Haytham. He looked at the rules of refraction. He gave the way to the modern day camera invention. Al-Idrisi put in the first map of the known world. We'll see pictures. Ibn Sina, he wrote the Law of Medicine book. And this is actually a real picture from the real book. It's still there, it still exists. This book was used in Europe till the 16th century. Jarab ibn Hayyan, the father of chemistry, is a close friend to Harun al-Rashid. In the golden age, the caliphs took care of scientists pretty well. So this is a pinhole camera. This is of course imagine a picture of Hassan al-Haytham, and you see the refraction of light, how this mosque is seen inverted on the side. So he put the rules for the modern day camera, right? This is an Idrisi map. This is actually a lamp. It looks like a regular lamp. Actually, it's a geared map, right? It's a kerosene lamp. But actually, it's automated that it can work just, because of being automated. So now for the engineers who are with us, you may actually like that. So they were able to develop machines like pumps using crankshafts. They used the gears. Remember the grits mill that we saw early on? They used gears for mills and water raising machines. So that was invented during their era. Translation continues. So we talked yesterday about Umayyads trying to reach to the Copts, to the Syriac, to other nations to get their material translated, right? The same thing continued. At this time, actually, they will pay by gold to do that. And this will lead to the House of Wisdom. House of Wisdom is just think of the biggest library we've been to. It's a major public academy and library in Baghdad. They had in it all ancient world translation. The caliphs actually encouraged scientists to come up with new scientific productions or manuscripts. It was under direct supervision of Ma'mun. So it was established by Harun al-Rashid. And Ma'mun kept playing the role when he came to power. He was the one who was actually paying authors and scientists by gold. So they actually weigh the book itself, and they give the scientist, which is the weight equivalent, gold equivalent. Unfortunately, when the Mongols came, it was destroyed. They threw the books in the river. We lost a treasure of, manuscripts. Of course, the river even turned black from ink. They used the books for their horses to cross over the river. So the last thing we'll talk about is famous figures, we chose Harun al-Rashid to talk about. Harun al-Rashid was that great enough that of a caliph that he was actually performing Hajj 1 year and lead his armies in battle the other year. Like we hear all the times of rulers who send the army for battle. He actually was leading the arms himself. He led to the greatest empire expansion. His era was an age of prosperity. He established the House of Wisdom. So Baghdad in his era was the Mecca for science enthusiasts and learners from all around the globe. So other countries or other nations actually were reaching out to him just to have relations with him. We'll skip the Barmakids just for time limitations for another day. But anyway, Harun al-Rashid, he established fortresses at the borders of Byzantine Empire. This is the Byzantine Empire. Abbasid Caliphate is all the way here down to the southeast. So he established fortress cities on the borders. He was fighting them every other year. He's leading the armies every other year to the extent that they asked for truce. They don't want to fight him anymore. We want to pay homage, so stay away from us. Until another emperor came to power, it's called Nekfurus, and he reached out to Harun al-Rashid saying, well, the lady, the empress before me was so weak that she paid you homage. From here on, I want you to pay me. I want the money that she actually paid you. So Harun replies, from Harun to the Roman dog. Again, he's talking to the emperor, right? The answer is what you will see, not what you will hear. And he assembles an army of 135,000 Muslim troops. He gets in fight with the Byzantine Empire that the Nekfurus, the emperor, had to surrender and pay homage similar to the empress before him. This is something that I think is interesting for everyone. So the Charlemagne gift water clock. This is actually in the German textbooks. Charlemagne was the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. He gave him this gift. It's a water clock. It's a clock that when the priests have seen it, you thought there are demons in it, and they actually destroyed it. I found this video on YouTube. It's just for a few seconds. Let's see how it works. So this is just an example of the video of the water clock. I just found it interesting, so I thought of sharing with you guys. When the priest actually destroyed it, Charlemagne was very upset. He tried to fix it. He was not able to, and actually was advised to reach out to Harun al-Rashid to send someone to fix it, but he said it will make him look bad that his gift was actually destroyed by his own court. Famous quotes that you can hear from Rashid, "O cloud, rain wherever you want, your kharaj is mine." Kharaj is when a piece of land brings up the crops. Part of the profits made from those crops goes to the government, to the Beit al-Mal, right, for the House of Treasury. So he says, he looks at the clouds and he says, "Oh cloud, you can rain wherever you want. Your kharaj or your money, the money that you will be producing will come to me. It will come to my treasury house anyway." And he's the one who said, "Take your battle to them. Don't let them bring it to you." Anyway, his era was so we'll talk about his era. He was really brave. Maximum expansion happened, and he died even on his way to battle to conquer a rebellion. Okay, so that was Harun al-Rashid in brief. We'll talk about two religious scholars, and by that we'll be finishing our four religious school of fiqh. So yesterday we talked we talked about Abu Hanifa Nu'man. We talked about Imam Malik. Today we'll talk just briefly about Imam Shafi'i. This is actually this from Egypt. This is a real picture. This is where Imam Shafi'i is buried. So he was actually born in Palestine. He studied both Hanafi and the Maliki fiqh of jurisprudence schools. And actually, Maliki was actually his tutor, right? So he studied the Maliki from Malik himself. We said yesterday that all of them are persecuted at some stages of their life. This is the hardship brings the best out of a person, right? So he actually was in Yemen, and the Yemen governor accused him of supporting the Alawites revolution. He was taken over to Harun al-Rashid, and Harun al-Rashid, in his presence, one of the scientists actually knew him, and he told Harun al-Rashid about how much knowledgeable this guy is and how much helpful he can be to him, and actually was released. So he established the Shafi'i school of thought. He authored the book named Al-Risala. Risala means the message in English. And actually what I liked most when I was reading about it, the Risala was written once in Iraq and written again in Egypt. So why did you, and actually had different solutions for a problem, right? So just as a reminder, the jurisprudence, al-fiqh, means we're trying to find answers to questions that direct answers cannot be seen in the scripts, Quran and Sunnah, right? So when in Iraq, he wrote it first, then he changed it in Egypt. So he said, when basically the reason was that his thought has evolved. He didn't shy away from changing his mind after he figured out there was better solutions to such questions. So he had great respect for his tutor Malik, but some people, they took it to the extremes. Some people in North Africa kept the Malik helmet Imam Malik helmet, and actually was praying to Allah through it. For example, when they didn't have rain, they would ask Allah for rain just by holding it for the blessing. When he came out disagreeing with Imam Malik, well, actually the love started changing to hate, especially in Egypt and North Africa, because yesterday we showed the map that the whole North African from Egypt all the way to Morocco was under the Maliki fiqh school, right? So people started changing their minds about Imam Shafi'i. And this is his effect. Look at the blue. We see some effects, a blue color effects of his fiqh school in Egypt. We see it in Southeast Africa, in Yemen, maybe Azerbaijan, I'm not sure where this area is, and of course Southeast Asia. So Imam ibn Hanbal says about him that every 100 years Allah sends someone to renew the religion. Umar ibn al-Aziz was in the first 100 years and al-Shafi'i in the second 100 years. Imam ibn Hanbal is actually, we'll talk about it in the next slide, is one of who establishes Hanbali. A scholar says about him, I've never seen anyone wiser than Shafi'i. If the whole nation came together and made into one mind, his mind would be wiser. So it's just a shame that we don't learn about these great, Islamic figures. So just I thought I'd share it with you all, great scholars who affected our Islamic history. So the last school, fiqh, was established by Ibn Hanbal. He established his Hanbali jurisprudence school of thought, was born in Basra in Iraq. He traveled everywhere to learn. One of his stories that traveled all the way to Turkmenistan just to meet one man who had a hadith of Prophet ﷺ. One man had one hadith, and he just met him. The story says that he met him, he got the hadith from him, and he returned all the way back to Iraq. He had strong memory, he was a pious man. He had fear of death that sometimes prevent him from eating and drinking. Not fear of death, because the fear of death is the fear of meeting Allah. We all have this fear of meeting Allah because of the sins we all do, right? And we're all seeking mercy and forgiveness from Allah. So he authored the famous book Musnad ibn Hanbal, right? Similar to old scholars as well, he was persecuted. There was a fitna. We talked yesterday what fitna is, the discord, right, of the Quran creation. We're not going through details at all. This is a big topic that you feel free to look it up. When he disagreed with Al-Ma'mun and with Mu'tasim, he was in prison. Over there, he was tortured. And he stayed in it long enough that when he didn't change his mind, they let him go. But he's forbidden from giving any lectures and talks to anyone else. So Imam Muhammad, you see the Hanbali school of fiqh. You see it in the dark green here. So it's basically in the Arabian Peninsula. You don't see it much elsewhere. Scholars thinking maybe one of the reasons that this is the last school of thought coming out. So the others already established. You see the Maliki is all over here, right? Talked about al-Shafi'i, and we talked about the Hanafi yesterday, right? Shafi'i is in blue, right? Al-Hanafi all the way in grass green. But this is only the areas that Hanbali, some other said that his fiqh school there's lack of ijtihad. Ijtihad, as we said, is we're trying to find innovative or actually figuring solutions to problems that was not directly revealed to us in the scripts. So these are some of the reasons why was it the least spread. I think this brings us to the end of our slides. Thank you all for listening.